Welcome back to Grimverse History, where we uncover the strange and forgotten sides of history. Sparta did not kill the wives of defeated enemies. It kept them. After the war, their marriages were erased, their bodies reassigned to the state, their lives reduced to function. They were forced to live, to bear children for Sparta, inside a system where survival meant obedience. Tonight's story is about that fate. What Spartan warriors forced enemy wives to endure, a punishment designed to last longer than death. Now imagine waking before sunrise in a Roman insula. Your room smells of damp wood and old smoke. You stretch beneath coarse wool that never fully warms. Footsteps echo below as vendors argue in the street. You open a narrow door and touch rough stone walls. They feel cold, permanent, and uninterested in your comfort. Somewhere nearby, someone coughs too deeply. Another neighbor does not wake up at all. No one asks questions about that. Wherever you are listening, from tonight, you are welcome here. If this story feels calm enough to stay with you, you may leave a quiet like or subscribe for more night journeys. Only if it feels natural, and only if you wish. Now, dim the lights until edges soften gently. Let background sounds blend into a steady hum. Allow the fan or night air to breathe slowly. Loosen your thoughts without pushing them away. Settle into stillness as time stretches quietly. We are in Rome, during its imperial height. The city believes itself eternal and unstoppable. But today, you are not a senator or general. You are ordinary, replaceable, and mostly invisible. And that is why surviving even one day becomes uncertain. Melina walks when she is told to walk. Her name still belongs to her for now. Everything else has already been counted. You stand close enough to feel the air change. Not the heat of battle, but its aftermath. The silence that follows efficiency, not mercy. Decala has already fallen behind her memory. There are no screams left to echo. Only order, arranged carefully by unfamiliar hands. Spartan guards do not rush or shout. They gesture, record, and move people forward. Melina wears clean garments that no longer protect status. The fabric feels fine, but meaningless now. Gold clasps remain fastened because no one cares yet. That detail should feel comforting, but it does not. You notice how organized everything appears. Women stand in lines that form naturally. Names are spoken once, then remembered accurately. No insults are offered, and none are required. This is not chaos pretending to be strength. This is a system that already knows the ending. Melina was once introduced at banquets. She once corrected poets gently, without raising her voice. Now her identity reduces to associations and usefulness. Wife of a general, noted quietly, then set aside. You feel the strange calm settle in. Nothing here feels personal or emotional. That absence becomes its own form of pressure. Sparta does not process prisoners with cruelty. It processes them with consistency. Hands move in practice sequences. Eyes measure posture, health, and silence. Questions are unnecessary when outcomes are fixed. Melina realizes something before anyone explains it. Survival here does not mean release. It means reassignment under new expectations. You watch her adjust without realizing she does. Her shoulders straighten, then still. Her breathing slows, then matches the pace around her. This place rewards compliance without acknowledging it. There is no celebration of victory here. There is only inventory and allocation. Women are grouped, separated, then regrouped. Each decision feels final without explanation. Melina is not harmed in this moment. That is the unsettling part. Nothing terrible happens immediately. Nothing needs to. Sparta believes fear works best without urgency. You hear the sound of sandals on stone, regular, unhurried, impossible to interrupt. The ground feels colder than before, not because of weather, but intention. Melina crosses a threshold without ceremony. She enters something larger than confinement. She enters a machine designed for outcomes. The system does not hate her. It simply has plans that exclude her preferences. This is what Sparta calls order. The air smells different beyond the courtyard. Something heavier begins to take shape quietly. The change does not arrive with shouting or chains. It arrives with words spoken calmly and recorded carefully. In Sparta, identity is something the state can revoke. You stand in a courtyard that smells faintly of dust. Morning light touches stone without warmth or interest. Officials speak in neutral tones that suggest routine. This is not personal, and that is the point. Here, women are no longer addressed as wives or mothers. They are no longer citizens of anywhere that matters. They become assets temporarily assigned to the state. The transition happens verbally, and it happens completely. You notice how language does most of the work. Bodies are examined without apology or urgency. Measurements are taken like notes during inventory. Health, posture, and silence are all evaluated. The word potential replaces every former relationship. No one raises a hand or a voice. That restraint feels colder than violence ever could. Those judged suitable are redirected without discussion. They are placed into households as secondary wives. The purpose is simple, clearly stated, and final. Produce children who belong to Sparta, not themselves. You hear the explanation delivered with practiced calm. It sounds efficient, even helpful, depending on tone. Others are separated quietly and without announcement. Their destination is described using polite abstractions: training units, developmental oversight, corrective environments. The words remain clean, while meanings grow heavier. You feel the temperature drop slightly around that group. Some are sent toward temples or assigned to service roles. These placements sound merciful when compared aloud. They are still transfers of ownership, just better decorated. Every path removes choice with the same precision. You begin to understand the difference here. This is not chaos wearing armor. This is order wearing neutrality. Sparta does not need rage to enforce control. It relies on repetition, structure, and silence. Each decision feels official, not cruel. That distinction matters to the system. The women sense it almost immediately. Resistance feels pointless without an audience. Anger finds no surface to strike against. There is only procedure continuing as designed. You notice how quickly names stop being used. Categories replace them without resistance. Utility becomes the final measure of worth. This is violence that does not lose efficiency. It does not require witnesses to feel powerful. It simply continues, unchanged and unashamed. The state calls this necessary. You might call it something else quietly. Either way, the outcome remains the same. Footsteps echo again, slower and more deliberate now. Something more permanent waits beyond the next threshold. The answer begins earlier than the women remember. It begins after conquest settles into routine anxiety. Victory arrives, then refuses to leave quietly. You feel the weight shift as time moves backward. Fields stretch wide, green, and recently taken. Messenia lies subdued, yet never truly silent. The helots outnumber their rulers by uncomfortable margins. Every harvest brings food and quiet resentment together. Sparta learns to sleep lightly from that moment onward. Fear does not announce itself loudly here. It hums beneath daily rituals and careful habits. A city surrounded by laborers watches itself constantly. You sense the tension in ordinary mornings. Knives are cleaned with extra care. Doors are checked twice without explanation. Security becomes culture before it becomes policy. Sparta chooses an unusual solution to survival. It turns the entire society into a camp. Nothing exists that does not support control. Children feel this first, before language fully forms. The Argoge removes comfort like a lesson plan. Hunger teaches obedience better than lectures ever could. Cold trains endurance without asking permission. You watch boys learn silence before courage. Emotions are trimmed away like excess material. Affection becomes suspicious, then inefficient. Pain turns into information rather than warning. This education claims it builds strength. It also builds useful detachment. Adolescence brings a darker refinement of purpose. The cryptia waits beyond official descriptions. Night exercises replace daylight instruction quietly. Targets are chosen who cannot complain publicly. You notice how language protects the practice. Training sounds cleaner than killing when spoken carefully. Discipline sounds noble when fear stays unnamed. Young Spartans learn to move unseen and unquestioned. They learn that certain lives exist for maintenance. Helots become variables in a larger equation. This is not madness pretending to be order. It is order born from sustained panic. You begin to understand the internal logic. A population ruled by fear builds fearful rulers. A system raised on control values predictability. Compassion introduces uncertainty, and uncertainty invites revolt. So Sparta removes compassion early and thoroughly. Adults carry this training without reflection. Marriage supports reproduction, not intimacy or choice. Women exist to strengthen numbers and continuity. Everything else distracts from readiness. You hear how calm this sounds aloud. That calm is carefully engineered over generations. Sparta does not enjoy violence for its own sake. It enjoys stability purchased at any acceptable cost. The state prefers systems that do not hesitate. Fear, once organized, becomes policy. You might call this efficiency under pressure. Others might call it survival without imagination. Either way, the machine keeps turning reliably. The wind changes direction across the training fields. Something human waits to be examined. Next. Melina is reassigned without ceremony or explanation. Her future arrives disguised as domestic stability. The state calls it a household assignment. You walk with her toward a modest Spartan home. Stone walls hold heat unevenly through the day. The space smells of oil, iron, and restraint. This is not a prison by name or design. It simply functions like one with better manners. Cleomenes lives here alone most of the time. He is a citizen, a soldier, and quietly exhausted. His posture remains disciplined even in rest. The system built him carefully, then left him there. Melina understands the terms quickly enough. Survival here requires measurable contribution. Pregnancy equals usefulness, and usefulness delays disappearance. The math is simple and unkind. You notice how quickly her thinking adapts. Fear becomes information rather than panic. Every gesture starts carrying strategic weight. She learns to read power without being taught. The E4s never raise their voices. That is how you know they decide everything. Men from the cryptia pass through sometimes. They speak softly and look too closely. Melina memorizes which silences feel dangerous. Cleomenes does not speak much at first. He follows routine with impressive consistency. Training shaped him into something efficient and distant. Affection was never part of the curriculum. You sense the cracks forming quietly. Melina begins with observation rather than resistance. She listens more than she speaks. She mirrors calm where anxiety might attract attention. Over time, her presence becomes familiar. Familiarity creates tolerance without announcement. Cleomenes starts to linger in rooms longer. He asks questions that do not need answers. He listens to her voice without correcting it. This is not romance or rebellion. It is influence applied carefully under constraint. Melina understands that control here is indirect. You do not challenge the system directly. You work through its neglected corners. Loneliness becomes an opening rather than a weakness. Cleomenes begins to soften in small ways. He hesitates before speaking like an order. He notices her absence when she leaves the room. These are not victories worth celebrating aloud. They are advantages worth protecting quietly. You watch Melina shift roles without changing posture. She remains compliant without becoming invisible. She offers stability without surrendering awareness. The system notices nothing unusual. That is exactly the point. Melina does not escape her situation. She embeds herself inside it deliberately. She becomes necessary rather than defiant. In Sparta, necessity receives better treatment than protest. She survives by becoming difficult to replace. The house grows quieter at night now. Something unresolved waits just beyond usefulness. Melina's safety arrives quietly, without celebration or relief. A child is born, examined, weighed, and accepted by the system. Passing inspection becomes a shield that no one announces aloud. You stand nearby and feel the room exhale slightly. Breathing returns to normal rhythms for the first time. Usefulness has bought time, and time changes everything here. Motherhood functions as currency in Sparta. It does not grant freedom or kindness. It delays removal, reassignment, and quieter endings. The protection feels conditional, but it is protection nonetheless. You notice how attention shifts around her now. Voices soften without becoming friendly. Decisions take longer when her name appears. The system respects outcomes more than intentions. Cleomenes changes without noticing the moment it begins. He returns home earlier than routine requires. He pauses before leaving rooms that feel occupied. Training taught him efficiency, not attachment. Attachment finds him anyway, without permission. Melina does not push or demand. She allows presence to do the work. Care becomes habit, then expectation. Cleomenes learns what it means to miss something. You watch fear change shape inside him. It stops pointing outward toward enemies. It begins pointing inward toward loss. Sparta notices these changes eventually. A soldier who hesitates has already changed allegiance. A man who wants to return home has competing priorities. The system reads softness as risk, not growth. Honor presents its final test without disguise. Dying correctly preserves reputation and protects the household. Escape threatens everything the state claims to value. The choice feels theoretical until it becomes immediate. You feel the tension tighten during ordinary evenings. Steps slow when patrols pass outside. Words are chosen with unfamiliar care. Plans form quietly in shared glances. They choose to leave rather than disappear properly. This decision carries no speeches or vows. It carries movement during the wrong hours. It carries fear managed carefully rather than denied. Running becomes an act of reclaiming direction. You sense how impossible this sounds in Spartan terms. A system built on control assumes compliance forever. It underestimates the persistence of wanting to live. Sparta creates weapons with remarkable consistency. It cannot fully remove memory, choice, or attachment. Those elements return whenever control relaxes slightly. Melina does not defeat the system directly. She survives long enough to step beyond it. Cleomenes follows, already changed beyond repair. This is not a heroic ending by Spartan standards. It is worse than death because it refuses submission. Sometimes living is the most disruptive act available. Night air carries unfamiliar freedom beyond the hills. Something human continues moving, quietly, into uncertainty. The journey begins to quiet itself now. The tension loosens, and the night feels wider. Nothing else needs to be held tightly. Somewhere behind us, stone courtyards cool under starlight. Sandals no longer strike the ground in measured rhythm. The air carries faint traces of oil, dust, and distance. A place shaped by discipline rests without watching. Its rules remain, but their voices soften. You can almost feel the moment closing, like a heavy book settling shut beside the bed, like a door easing back into its frame. History releases you without asking anything more. It stays where it belongs, quiet and contained. Your attention drifts back to the present. The room around you feels familiar again. Breathing becomes steady and unremarkable. The weight of the story no longer presses forward. It simply rests, finished for the night. If this story stayed with you gently, you may leave a small sign behind. A quiet like, a share, or a subscription, only if it feels comfortable to do so. These small gestures help stories reach others, especially those listening late into the dark. There is no rush and no expectation, only an open invitation, waiting patiently. The night continues, undisturbed by choice. For now, let the echoes fade completely. Let the past remain closed and undemanding. Sleep can arrive without resistance or thought. Nothing else is required from you tonight. Goodbye, and we will meet again.